For 730 days, the man in the wheelchair was nothing more than a ghost in his own house. He was just a body that Amara had to wash, feed, and dress. He was the broken king of the Kong Empire, silent and frozen. But tonight, the impossible happened. The sound of a heavy lock clicking open echoed through Amara's tiny servant's room. It was 2 a.m. The penthouse was supposed to be dead silent. Amara sat up in her narrow bed, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She watched the brass doorknob turn slowly. She grabbed the heavy ceramic lamp from her bedside table, ready to swing. The door creaked open. A tall shadow stretched across the floor. Amara opened her mouth to scream, but the sound died in her throat. Standing in her doorway was not a burglar. It was not the security guard. It was Kong Taehyun, the man who hadn't moved a muscle below his neck in 2 years. He wasn't sitting. He was standing. He was standing 6 feet tall, his shoulders broad and strong, looking at her with eyes that were terrifyingly sharp. He took a step inside. Then another. He moved like a tiger stalking prey, silent, powerful, and dangerous. He closed the door behind him and locked it. "Put the lamp down, Amara," he said. His voice was deep and rough from years of silence, but it didn't shake. "We have a lot of work to do before the sun comes up. Before we find out why this billionaire was faking his paralysis for 2 years, take a second to subscribe to the channel and type where you are watching from in the comments. This story is about to get crazy. To understand why a man with billions of dollars would pretend to be a vegetable, we have to go back to the beginning." Amara Okafor remembered the first day she walked into the Sky Palace in Seoul. She was 26, broke, and desperate. Her mother back in Lagos needed surgery, and the teaching job Amara had come to Korea for had turned out to be a scam. She was left with nothing but debts and a visa that was expiring. Then came the job offer. The Kong family needed a discreet caregiver. They didn't want a Korean nurse who would gossip to the press. They wanted a foreigner, someone invisible, someone who didn't speak the language well enough to understand their secrets. Or so they thought. Amara learned quickly that in the Kong household, silence was the only way to survive. Taehyun sat by the window all day, staring at the gray city below. He was 32, handsome in a devastating, tragic way. His black hair fell over his forehead, hiding eyes that looked dead. The doctors said it was a spinal injury from a car crash. They said his brain was fine, but his body was a prison. Amara's job was simple: keep him alive, keep him clean, and keep him out of the way. Every morning at 6 a.m., Amara would enter his room. "Good morning, Mr. Kong," she would say softly. He never answered. She would wipe his face with a warm cloth. She would shave his jaw, her fingers trembling slightly because his skin was always so cold. She would lift him, he was heavy dead weight, into his chair. She hated the way his head would loll to the side until she propped it up with a pillow. It felt wrong. It felt like caging a lion. "You have to eat, sir," she would whisper, holding a spoon of porridge to his lips. "Please. Just a little." Sometimes he would swallow. Sometimes the food would dribble down his chin, and Amara would wipe it away gently, her heart aching for him. She talked to him because no one else did. "It's raining today," she would tell him while massaging his stiff legs. "Back home in Nigeria, the rain is loud. It hits the tin roofs like a drum. Here, the rain is polite. It just whispers." She told him about her mother. She told him about her dreams of opening a bakery. She told him about the loneliness that felt like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. She thought she was talking to a wall. She didn't know the wall was listening to every single word. The real danger wasn't Taehyun's silence. It was his family. His stepmother, Madame Choi, and his younger half-brother, Min-jae. They were the vultures circling the body. They visited once a week, bringing cold air and cruel words. One afternoon, 3 months into Amara's employment, Min-jae stormed into the penthouse. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Amara would make in 10 lifetimes, and he smelled of expensive whiskey. "Look at him," Min-jae sneered, walking around Taehyun's wheelchair. The great Kong Taehyun, beaten by a slippery road. Min-jae leaned down, his face inches from his brother's. "The board is meeting next month, brother. We're finally going to declare you incompetent. I'm going to take your office. I'm going to take your shares. And I'm going to turn this penthouse into my bachelor pad." Taehyun didn't blink. He stared straight ahead, his face a mask of nothingness. Amara stood in the corner, clutching a towel, terrified to move. Min-jae laughed, a cruel, wet sound. "Are you really in there?" Min-jae asked. "Can you hear me?" Then, Min-jae did something that made Amara gasp. He was holding a lit cigarette. He lowered it slowly toward Taehyun's hand, which was resting on the armrest of the wheelchair. The burning tip got closer and closer to Taehyun's skin. "Stop!" Amara screamed. She didn't think. She just moved. She threw herself between the brothers, knocking Min-jae's hand away. The cigarette fell onto the expensive carpet. Min-jae stumbled back, his face twisting in shock and rage. "You stupid foreign rat!" Min-jae shouted. He raised his hand to strike her. Amara flinched, closing her eyes, waiting for the blow. But it never came. The room went deadly silent. When Amara opened her eyes, Min-jae was looking at Taehyun. For a split second, Amara thought she saw Taehyun's finger twitch. Just a tiny movement. But Min-jae didn't see it. He just scoffed, adjusting his suit jacket. "Lucky for you, I don't hit the help," Min-jae spat. "Clean this up. And if you ever touch me again, I'll have you deported before you can pack your bags." He stormed out. Amara was shaking. She fell to her knees to pick up the cigarette, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Taehyun. "I'm so sorry, sir." She looked up at him. His expression hadn't changed. But his eyes were locked on hers. They weren't dead anymore. They were burning. It was a look of such intense fury and gratitude that it took her breath away. Then the look vanished, and he was the broken king again. That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the scene. Had she imagined it? Had he tried to move to protect her? Months passed. The seasons changed from the humid Korean summer to a biting winter. Amara's life became a loop of caretaking and fear. The atmosphere in the house grew heavier. Madame Choi began visiting more often, bringing lawyers with thick stacks of paper. They would sit in the living room, drinking tea and discussing Taehyun like he was a piece of furniture to be sold at an auction. "The accident was 2 years ago," Madame Choi said one evening. Amara was in the kitchen, pretending to make tea, but she was listening. "The doctors say there is no hope for recovery. If we move him to the facility in Switzerland, we can have full power of attorney by Friday." "Switzerland?" Min-jae's voice. "Why not just let him rot here?" "Because," the lawyer said, his voice dry, "as long as he is in Korea, the shareholders have hope he might return. If he is in a long-term care facility overseas, out of sight, he is out of mind. The company becomes yours, Min-jae." Amara dropped a spoon. Clang. The sound was like a gunshot. She froze. "What was that?" Min-jae barked. Amara walked out with the tea tray, keeping her head down. "Sorry, sir." Slippery hands. Min-jae glared at her. "You need to be gone by Friday, too. When we ship him out, we don't need a babysitter anymore." Amara's blood ran cold. Friday. That was in 3 days. They were going to send Taehyun away to some dark hole in Europe where he would be forgotten, and she would be thrown out onto the street. She looked at Taehyun. He was parked by the fireplace. He looked so lonely, so defenseless. A rage started to build in Amara's chest. It wasn't fair. He was a good man, she felt it. He listened to her. He never demanded. He endured his brother's torture with a dignity that broke her heart. That night, she stayed up late reading to him. She chose a book of poetry because he seemed to like the rhythm of it. But she couldn't focus. She closed the book. "They want to take you away," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They want to send you to Switzerland. I don't know what to do. I have no money. I have no power. I'm just nobody." She took his cold hand in hers. "But I promise you, Mr. Kong, I won't let them take you without a fight. I'll chain myself to this wheelchair if I have to." She squeezed his hand. And this time, she didn't imagine it. His thumb moved. It pressed against her palm. Distinctly. Deliberately. Once. Twice. Amara gasped. She pulled back, staring at his hand. "Mr. Kong." Nothing. No movement. His face was still. Amara stood up, her heart racing. "I'm going crazy," she muttered to herself. "I'm losing my mind." She tucked him into bed, turned off the lights, and went to her tiny room off the kitchen. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The clock ticked. 1 a.m. 1:30 a.m. 2 a.m. Friday was coming. The end was coming. Then the click. The doorknob turned. And now here they were. The man who couldn't move was standing in her room, locking the door. Amara was pressed against the wall, the ceramic lamp still in her hand, but lowered slightly. Her brain was trying to catch up with her eyes. "You," she stammered. "You can walk." Taehyun took another step toward her. The moonlight from the small window hit his face. He didn't look like the invalid she had cared for. He looked like a CEO. He looked like a predator. I could always walk, he said. Well, not always. The first 6 months were real. My legs were crushed. The doctors said I might never stand again. But then the feeling came back. The strength came back. You lied, Amara whispered. For 2 years? You let me feed you? You let me bathe you? You let your brother burn you. I had to, Taehyun said. He stopped just a foot away from her. She could smell his scent, clean soap and something metallic like danger. My car didn't just crash, Amara. The brake lines were cut. My brother tried to kill me. If I had recovered, if I had walked out of that hospital, he would have tried again. And next time, he wouldn't have missed. Amara felt dizzy. So you played dead. I played the long game, he corrected. His eyes were dark and intense, scanning her face. I became the furniture. I became the ghost. And because they thought I was brain dead, they discussed everything in front of me. Every bribe. Every stolen account. Every fake contract. I know where Min Jae hides the money. I know which judges Madam Choi bought. I have it all memorized. He tapped his temple. It's all in here. Why are you telling me this now? Amara asked, her voice trembling. Why stop pretending tonight? Because of Friday, Taehyun said. His jaw tightened. They are planning to ship me out in 48 hours. If I leave Korea, I lose. I can't protect the company, and I can't protect. He paused, looking at her with a strange softness that terrified her more than his anger. Protect what? You, he said. Amara blinked. Me? Min Jae fired you tonight, Taehyun said softly. He plans to have immigration pick you up on Saturday morning. He put a fake theft report in your file to make sure you never work in this country again. Amara covered her mouth with her hand. Oh God, he thinks you're weak. Taehyun stepped closer. He reached out and gently took the lamp from her shaking hand. He set it down on the desk without making a sound. He thinks you're just the help. He doesn't know that you're the only person in this house with a spine. Taehyun's hand lingered near her arm. You stood up to him for me. You were ready to burn for me. No one has ever done that. Not my father. Not my friends. Only you. The air in the small room felt electric. Amara looked up at him. This wasn't the patient she nursed. This was a man. A powerful, dangerous man who had been hiding in plain sight. So what do we do? Amara asked. Do we call the police? Taehyun smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a smile that promised violence. No police. The police are on Madam Choi's peril. We're going to do this my way. He reached into the pocket of his pajama pants she had put on him hours ago thinking he was helpless, and pulled out a small, black USB drive. Tomorrow morning is the board meeting, Taehyun said. Min Jae thinks he is going to be crowned king. He thinks I will be drooling in my wheelchair while he takes everything my father built. Taehyun leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper that sent shivers down Amara's spine. But tomorrow the dead are going to rise. And I need you to help me bury him. Me? Amara shook her head. I can't. You are my hands, Taehyun interrupted. He grabbed her shoulders. His grip was iron. I can walk, but I can't leave this room yet. The cameras in the hallway are still active. Min Jae watches the feeds. I need you to go into the lion's den for me. He pressed the USB drive into her hand. It was warm from his body. This drive has the evidence. The audio recordings of them planning the accident. The bank transfers. Everything. It needs to be connected to the main server in the boardroom before 9 a.m. If I get caught, Amara started. If you get caught, they will kill you, Taehyun said simply. He wasn't sugarcoating it. But if you succeed, I will give you the world, Amara. I will clear your debts. I will save your mother. I will make sure no one ever looks down on you again. He stared into her eyes. Do you trust me? Amara looked at the man who had lied to her for 2 years. But she also looked at the man who had listened to her stories about the rain. She looked at the man who was offering her a chance to strike back at the people who treated her like garbage. She closed her fingers around the USB drive. What do I have to do? She asked. Wait for the shift change at 4 a.m., Taehyun said. The security guard, Mr. Park, falls asleep for 20 minutes. You have to sneak into the study, access the private elevator, and get to the server room on the main floor. But there is one problem. What? My brother, Taehyun said grimly. He's not in his room. He's downstairs in the study right now. Drunk. And he has a gun. Amara stopped breathing. You have to get past him without him seeing you, Taehyun whispered. If he wakes up, if he sees you. Suddenly, a heavy thud came from the ceiling above them. Then the sound of glass shattering. Someone was screaming upstairs. Taehyun's head snapped toward the door. "He's coming," he hissed. "He's coming for me early." Taehyun looked at the wheelchair in the corner of Amara's room. She had brought it in to clean it. He looked at Amara. "I have to get back in the chair. I have to look helpless. If he finds me standing, he shoots us both." "Hurry," Amara whispered. Taehyun moved fast, diving into the wheelchair. He slumped his body, twisting his face into that familiar, slack expression. But just as Amara unlocked her door to pretend she was sleeping, the main door to the penthouse crashed open. "Amara!" Min-jae's voice roared through the hallway. He sounded insane. "Bring me the nurse. I want to show her what happens to rats." Heavy footsteps came thundering down the hall toward Amara's room. Taehyun's eyes snapped open for 1 second. He looked at Amara. "Lock the door," he commanded. "It won't hold him," she cried. "Then get behind me," Taehyun said, his voice changing from the patient to the protector. "And whatever happens, do not close your eyes." The handle of Amara's door began to rattle violently. The wood around the lock splintered with a deafening crack. Amara screamed, scrambling backward until her back hit the cold radiator. The door flew open, bouncing off the wall. Min-jae stood there, swaying like a tree in a storm. He was holding a half-empty bottle of expensive scotch in one hand and a black pistol in the other. His eyes were red, wild, and unfocused. "There you are," Min-jae slurred, stepping into the tiny room. The smell of alcohol hit Amara like a wave. Plotting. Always plotting. Amara looked at Taehyun. He was slumped in his wheelchair, his head lolling to the right, his mouth slightly open. He looked completely gone. But Amara saw his right hand, hidden under the blanket on his lap, clenched into a fist so tight his knuckles were white. Min-jae laughed, a dark, ugly sound. He kicked the footrest of Taehyun's wheelchair. "Look at him. The king of sleeping." Min-jae leaned down, putting his face inches from Taehyun's. "Do you know what day it is, brother? It's the last day you own anything. Tomorrow, I flush you down the toilet." Taehyun didn't move. He didn't blink. He was a statue of tragedy. Min-jae stood up and turned his watery eyes to Amara. "And you," he pointed the gun loosely at her chest. Amara stopped breathing. "You think you're smart, don't you? Hiding in here with him? I know you stole my watch." I didn't steal anything, sir," Amara whispered, her hands shaking. "Liar!" Min-jae roared. He lunged at her, grabbing her by the collar of her pajamas. He slammed her against the wall. The gun dug into her neck. "I'm going to teach you a lesson before I kick you out." Amara squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the pain. She couldn't fight him. He was too big and he had a weapon. Suddenly, a loud whirring noise filled the room. Whir-clunk. Min-jae screamed in pain and released Amara, hopping on one foot. The heavy electric wheelchair had surged forward, pinning Min-jae's ankle against the metal bed frame. "You stupid machine." Min-jae howled, dropping the gun. It skittered across the floor, sliding under the bed. Amara looked at Taehyun. His face was still slack, his eyes staring at nothing. But she knew. She knew he had manipulated the joystick under the blanket with micro-precision. He had used his malfunctioning chair to crush his brother's ankle. Min-jae fell back onto Amara's bed, clutching his leg. "My leg. It's broken." He glared at the wheelchair. "This thing is haunted. I told Mother we should have scrapped it." He tried to stand, but the pain made him dizzy. The alcohol and the shock were too much. He groaned, rolling onto his side. I'm going to kill you all." His voice faded. Within seconds, heavy, snoring breaths filled the room. He had passed out from the pain and the whiskey. Amara stood frozen, her heart pounding so hard she thought it would burst. She looked at Taehyun. Slowly, Taehyun lifted his head. The vegetable look vanished. His eyes were clear and sharp. He pointed at the gun under the bed. "Kick it away," he whispered. Amara dropped to her knees, found the pistol, and slid it into the corner behind the radiator. "Is he?" Amara asked. "He's out cold," Taehyun said quietly. "We got lucky. But he won't stay asleep forever. Amara, you have to go. Now! Now!" Amara looked at the clock. It was 3:15 a.m. "But the guard." "Mr. Park takes his break in 5 minutes," Taehyun said. "Listen to me closely. You need to go to the 3rd floor. The server room is behind the library. The code is 1-9-8-8. That's my birth year. Min-jae is too stupid to change it." Amara grabbed a thick sweater and pulled it over her pajamas. She looked at Taehyun. "What about you?" If he wakes up, I'm just a cripple in a chair," Taehyun said grimly. He won't suspect me. But if he finds you here with that USB drive, we are both dead. Go. Run. Amara nodded. She felt the small USB drive in her pocket. It felt heavy, like it contained the weight of the entire world. She opened the door and checked the hallway. Empty. She slipped out, her bare feet silent on the expensive marble floors. The penthouse was a maze of shadows. Every shadow looked like a monster. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a scream. She reached the servants' staircase and began to descend. Downstairs, the house was dark. The moonlight filtered through the giant windows, casting long, skeletal shapes on the walls. Amara held her breath as she passed the security station. The chair was empty. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the desk. Mr. Park was on his break, just like Taehyun said. She hurried toward the library. The double doors were heavy. She pushed one open just enough to squeeze through. The smell of old paper and leather hit her. She navigated through the rows of books toward the hidden panel in the back. Beep, 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 beep. She punched in 1-9-8-8. Green light. Click. The panel slid open, revealing a steel door. The server room. It hummed with the sound of 100 hard drives. It was freezing inside. Amara stepped in and found the main terminal. Her hands were shaking so badly, she dropped the USB drive twice before she managed to plug it in. A screen popped up. Authorization required. Oh no, Amara whispered. He didn't give me a password. She stared at the blinking cursor. Think. What would a man like Min Jae use as a password? Or was it Taehyun's old system? She typed admin, access denied. She typed Kong. Access denied. She typed money. Access denied. System lockdown in 30 seconds. Panic clawed at her throat. If the system locked down, the alarm would sound. The guards would come. Madame Choi would come. She closed her eyes, thinking back to the nights she spent reading to Taehyun. What mattered to him? What mattered to this family? She remembered something Min Jae had screamed earlier. The crown. He wanted to be the king. She typed king. Access denied. 10 seconds. Then she remembered the painting in the hallway. The one Min Jae always stopped to admire. It was a painting of himself. Narcissist. She typed Minji. Access granted. You vain idiot, Amara breathed a sigh of relief. She clicked the file named Upload. The progress bar appeared. 10%. 20%. It was moving so slowly. Upstairs, in the servants' room, Min Jae groaned. He rolled over. His eyes fluttered open. He looked at his ankle, swollen and purple. He looked at the wheelchair. It was empty. Min Jae sat up, blinking. The wheelchair was empty. He looked around the room. Amara was gone. Taehyun was gone. What? Min Jae mumbled. He dragged himself off the bed, hopping on one leg into the hallway. Taehyun. The hallway was empty, but the elevator indicator showed the car was moving. It was going down to the 3rd floor. Min Jae's eyes narrowed. The fog of alcohol cleared just enough for rage to take over. He limped toward the stairs, grabbing the railing. He didn't need a gun. He had his bare hands, and he was going to snap his brother's neck. Back in the server room, the bar hit 85%. Come on, Amara pleaded with the screen. Suddenly, the library doors banged open. Amara froze. She ducked under the desk. I know someone is in here. It wasn't Min Jae's voice. It was sharp, female, and terrifying. It was Madame Choi. Amara covered her mouth with both hands. She could see Madame Choi's high heels clicking on the wooden floor through the gap under the desk. Click, click, click. Mr. Park, Madame Choi yelled. Why is the server room door open? Silence. Mr. Park was still on break. Madame Choi walked closer. She was holding a flashlight. The beam swept across the room, illuminating the rows of books. Then the beam hit the open panel door. Who is in there? Madame Choi hissed. She stepped into the server room. Amara curled into a tight ball. The upload was at 95%. If Madame Choi looked at the screen, she would see the file transfer. She would see evidence_of_murder_attempt.zip. Madame Choi walked toward the terminal. Her heels stopped inches from where Amara was hiding. Amara could smell her perfume, expensive roses and something chemical. Madame Choi reached out to touch the mouse. 98%. 99%. Suddenly, a hand clamped over Amara's mouth from behind. Amara almost died of fright. She hadn't heard anyone else come in. She struggled, but the grip was steel. She turned her head slowly in the dark under the desk. It was Taehyun. He was crouched beside her, barefoot, wearing his silk pajamas. He had crawled in through the ventilation shaft in the floor. He pressed a finger to his lips. His eyes were blazing with intensity. Madam Choi touched the mouse. The screen lit up. Upload complete. Madam Choi gasped. What is this? She leaned in to read the file name. Her eyes went wide. She reached for the power button to kill the system. Taehyun moved. He didn't just move. He exploded from under the desk like a panther. He grabbed Madam Choi's wrist before she could hit the button. Madam Choi screamed, spinning around. When she saw him, standing, strong and furious, her face went white as a sheet. Taehyun, she choked out. But you can't. Surprise, mother, Taehyun said, his voice cold as the grave. Did you miss me? Madam Choi stumbled back, her hand fumbling in her purse. She pulled out a taser. You monster. You tricked us. She lunged at him. Taehyun sidestepped, but his bad leg, the one that had atrophied slightly, buckled. He fell to one knee. Madam Choi raised the taser, aiming for his neck. No! Amara launched herself from under the desk, tackling Madam Choi around the waist. The three of them crashed into the server racks. Sparks flew. The taser skittered across the floor. Madam Choi kicked Amara in the stomach hard. Amara groaned, rolling away. Madam Choi scrambled for the taser. She grabbed it. She turned, eyes crazy, pointing it at Taehyun, who was struggling to stand. I should have finished the job 2 years ago. Madam Choi shrieked. She pulled the trigger. Click. Nothing happened. The taser was dead. Madam Choi looked at the device in horror. She looked up. Standing in the doorway of the server room was not Mr. Park. It wasn't Min-jae. It was the chief of police. Behind him were 6 armed officers. And behind them, holding a live camera streaming to the entire internet, was a news reporter. The red light on the camera was blinking. Madam Choi, the police chief said, holding up a pair of handcuffs. We received a live upload of a confession regarding the attempted murder of Kang Taehyun. You're on air. Madam Choi looked at the camera. She looked at Taehyun, who was now standing tall, his arm around Amara for support. Taehyun looked into the camera lens and smiled. Good morning, Korea. My name is Kang Taehyun, and I have a story to tell you. The screen went black. The flash of 1,000 cameras is blinding. It feels less like fame and more like an explosion. 1 minute, the server room was a dark, cold box of terror. The next, it was the center of the universe. The police officers swarmed Madam Choi, their voices shouting commands that blurred into a wall of noise. Amara stood pressed against a server rack, shivering. She watched as the woman who had terrified her for 2 years, the woman who wore silk like armor and insults like perfume, was shoved face first against the wall. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the loudest thing in the room. Click, click, click. Madam Choi wasn't screaming anymore. She was hissing. As the officers dragged her past Taehyun, she didn't look at her stepson. She looked at Amara. Her eyes were black pits of pure hatred. You filth, she spat, struggling against the officer's grip. You think this is over? You think you can walk away from this? I will bury you under the jail. Amara flinched, but then a hand covered her shoulder. It was heavy and warm. She looked up. Taehyun was standing there. He was leaning heavily on the doorframe, his legs trembling from the effort of standing for so long, but his face was stone. He stared at his stepmother until she looked away. Get her out of my sight, he ordered the police chief. He didn't sound like a man who had been disabled for 2 years. He sounded like a king reclaiming his throne. The next hour was a blur of chaos. Paramedics brought Min-jae down on a stretcher. He was conscious now, groaning in agony, his ankle swollen to the size of a melon. When he saw Taehyun standing in the hallway, surrounded by reporters, Min-jae started to weep. Not out of remorse, but out of self-pity. He did it. Min-jae sobbed to anyone who would listen. He broke my leg. He's a monster. But no one was listening to the man in the handcuffs. The cameras were trained on the miracle, the CEO who rose from the dead. Mr. Kang! Mr. Kang! The reporters shouted, shoving microphones in his face. Is it true you were faking it? Why did you wait so long? Who is the woman? Taehyun raised a hand, and the room went silent. He looked exhausted. His skin was pale, and sweat beaded on his forehead. I will make a full statement tomorrow, he said, his voice low. Right now, I need to rest. And I need privacy. He looked at the chief of police. Clear the house. It took 20 minutes for the police to herd everyone out. When the front door finally clicked shut, The silence that fell over the penthouse was heavy. It was just the two of them now. The adrenaline that had kept Amara moving suddenly vanished, leaving her knees weak. She slumped against the wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She buried her face in her hands. Amara! She looked up. Taehyun was trying to walk toward her, but his legs gave out. He stumbled, catching himself on a marble pillar. He wasn't Superman anymore. He was a man with muscles that hadn't been properly used in 700 days. Sir! Amara scrambled up, rushing to him. She caught him just as he began to slide. His weight was immense, pressing her against the pillar. For a moment, they were tangled together, breathing hard. She could feel his heart hammering against his ribs, just as fast as hers. I've got you, she whispered, slipping into her old role automatically. Lean on me. Let's get you to the sofa. She helped him limp to the massive leather couch in the living room. He collapsed onto it with a groan, rubbing his thigh. I think I overdid the dramatic entrance, he muttered, a faint, tired smile touching his lips. You think? Amara let out a shaky laugh. She went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and brought it to him. Her hands were still trembling. She watched him drink, the way his throat moved, the way his strong fingers gripped the glass. It hit her then, the reality of it. You're the CEO of Kong Industries, she said quietly. You're one of the richest men in Asia. And I'm just the maid who stole a USB drive. Taehyun set the glass down. The playfulness vanished from his eyes. You are not just the maid. You saved my life. Tonight, you saved the company. You saved everything. I did what I had to do, Amara said, looking at her bare feet. But now it's over. The police have them. You have your company back. You don't need a nurse anymore. She felt a lump form in her throat. I should go pack. Min-jae said immigration is coming for me on Saturday. I need to leave before they find me. She turned to go, but Taehyun moved faster than she expected. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. His grip wasn't gentle, it was desperate. No. Sir, please. Stop calling me sir, he said roughly. He pulled her closer until she was standing between his knees. He looked up at her, his eyes searching her face. You're not going anywhere. Do you really think I went through all of this just to let you walk out the door? Amara, for 2 years, your voice was the only thing that kept me sane. Your hands were the only warmth I felt. If you leave, this house is just a museum again. I can't live in a museum. Amara's heart skipped a beat. What are you saying? I'm saying, Taehyun said, his voice dropping to a whisper, that I don't know who I am without you anymore. I have billions of dollars, yes. But right now, I'm just a guy with bad legs who is terrified of being alone. He reached up and tucked a stray curl of hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, sending a jolt of electricity through her. Stay. Not as my nurse. As whatever comes next. The air in the room grew thick with tension. It was the kind of silence where anything could happen. Amara looked at his lips, then his eyes. She wanted to stay. God, she wanted to stay. But she was a realist. Taehyun, she said, testing his name on her tongue. It felt dangerous. Your world, it eats people like me. Look at your stepmother. Look at the press. They will tear me apart. Let them try. Taehyun's eyes darkened. I'm awake now. No one touches you. He leaned in. Amara didn't pull away. Their faces were inches apart. She could feel his breath on her skin. It was the moment the last 2 years had been building toward. The moment the barrier between master and servant finally shattered. Ding dong. The doorbell rang. It was sharp, loud, and demanding. They pulled apart like guilty teenagers. Taehyun frowned, his brow furrowing. I told the police to clear the building. Who is that? Maybe it's the press coming back? Amara asked, fear creeping back into her chest. Stay here, Taehyun said. He pushed himself up from the sofa, using the armrest for support. He limped toward the door, his face setting back into that cold CO mask. Amara followed him, staying a few steps behind. Taehyun opened the heavy front door. Standing there were 2 men in dark suits. They weren't police. They weren't reporters. They held clipboards and wore earpieces. Behind them stood 4 uniformed officers from the Immigration Control Bureau. Mr. Kong Taehyun? The lead agent asked. He didn't look impressed by the billionaire. He looked bored. Yes, Taehyun said, his voice ice. I gave strict orders not to be disturbed. We aren't here for you, sir, the agent said. He looked past Taehyun, his eyes locking onto Amara. We are here for Ms. Amara Okafor. Taehyun stepped in front of the door, blocking their view. She is under my protection. Whatever business you have, Speak to my lawyers in the morning. I'm afraid we can't do that, sir, the agent said, stepping forward. He held up a piece of paper. We have a warrant for her immediate arrest and deportation. The charge is grand larceny. A report was filed yesterday by Mr. Kong Min-jae claiming she stole a diamond watch valued at $50,000. The item was reportedly found in her luggage during a search an hour ago. That's a lie, Amara screamed, stepping forward. He planted it. I never stole anything. Amara, stay back, Taehyun warned, putting his arm out. Officer, my brother is currently in police custody for attempted murder. Anything he filed is a fabrication. I can vouch for her. That's for a judge to decide, sir, the agent said. He signaled to the officers behind him. Right now, the system shows a stolen item and an expired work visa. We have to take her. You are not taking her anywhere, Taehyun growled. He looked ready to fight them with his bare hands. Sir, step aside or you will be charged with obstruction of justice, the agent said, his hand resting on his taser. Taehyun didn't move. But Amara saw the officers reaching for their weapons. She saw Taehyun's legs trembling. If they fought, he would get hurt. He would go to jail. After everything he did to get his company back, he would lose it all for her. No, Amara said. She stepped out from behind Taehyun. Don't hurt him. Amara, don't. Taehyun turned to her, panic in his eyes. Go back inside. I can't let you lose this, she whispered to him. She looked at the agents. I'll go with you. No. Taehyun grabbed for her, but the officers were faster. Two of them seized Amara's arms, pulling her into the hallway. Get off me, Amara cried as they handcuffed her. Let her go. Taehyun lunged forward, but his weak leg buckled, and he fell hard onto the marble floor. He scrambled to get up, crawling toward the door. Amara! Taehyun! She screamed as they dragged her toward the elevator. Don't come for me. Just save yourself. The elevator doors slid shut, cutting off the sight of Taehyun screaming her name, crawling on the floor of his empty palace. Amara was alone again, and this time there was no one left to save her. The Incheon Immigration Detention Center was a place where hope went to die. For 48 hours, Amara had sat on a cold metal bench in a cell that smelled of bleach and despair. She was surrounded by women speaking a dozen different languages, all crying, all waiting to be sent away. Amara didn't cry. She was too numb. She stared at the concrete floor. In her mind, she was back in the penthouse, feeling the warmth of Taehyun's hand on her face. She remembered the way he had screamed her name as the elevator doors closed. That memory was the only thing keeping her warm, but it also hurt the most. He was a billionaire CEO. She was a deportee with a criminal record for grand larceny. Their worlds had touched for one glorious, terrifying night, and now the universe was correcting the mistake. Okafor, Amara, a guard barked, unlocking the cell door. Time to go. Amara stood up slowly. Her legs felt heavy. Is my lawyer here? She asked, her voice raspy. The guard laughed dryly. No lawyers for you. You're on the expedited list. Flight 802 to Lagos leaves in 2 hours. Move. They handcuffed her again. The metal bit into her wrists. They led her down a long, sterile hallway, past processing desks and indifferent officials. Outside, a gray bus waited to take the deportees to the tarmac. It was raining. The sky was weeping, just like she had told Taehyun it did in Lagos. Amara stepped onto the bus. She sat by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. Goodbye, Taehyun, she thought. Goodbye, Korea. The bus engine rumbled to life. But before it could move, a siren wailed. Not a police siren, something deeper, louder. The bus driver slammed on the brakes. Amara looked out the window. A convoy of black SUVs was tearing across the tarmac, ignoring all safety regulations. They were moving in a V formation like a spear tip. They swerved in front of the bus, blocking its path. The bus driver honked his horn furiously, but the SUVs didn't move. The door of the lead car flew open. A man stepped out. He was wearing a black trench coat, leaning on a sleek carbon fiber cane. He looked like a storm cloud given human form. It was Taehyun. Open the door. Taehyun shouted at the bus driver, his voice booming over the sound of the rain. Behind him, a dozen lawyers in expensive suits spilled out of the other cars. And behind them, the press. Cameras, microphones, live-stream drones buzzing in the air like angry hornets. The immigration officers on the bus looked panicked. Who is that? One asked. That, Amara whispered, pressing her hand against the glass, tears finally spilling over, is the man who doesn't know how to give up. The bus doors hissed open. 2 immigration agents stepped out to confront him. "Sir, this is a restricted area. You are violating federal law." Taehyun didn't stop. He walked right up to them, the cane clicking rhythmically on the wet pavement. He pulled a piece of paper from his coat pocket and slammed it against the chest of the lead agent. "Read it," Taehyun commanded. The agent blinked, looking down at the document. This is a receipt. "A receipt from Cartier, dated 6 months ago," Taehyun said, his voice amplified by the reporter's microphones. "For a diamond watch. Purchased by me. Under my name." He turned to the cameras. "My brother, Min Jae, claimed Ms. Okafor stole this watch. But you cannot steal what was already yours." The crowd gasped. The reporters started shouting questions. "I bought that watch for Amara 6 months ago," Taehyun lied smoothly. Or maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe he had bought it, waiting for a day he could give it to her. "I kept it in the safe. Min Jae took it and planted it in her bag. The charges are false. The report is false. And if you do not release my fiancé immediately, I will sue this entire department for kidnapping." "Fiancé?" The word rippled through the crowd. Amara's breath hitched. "Fiancé?" The immigration agent looked at the receipt, then at the angry billionaire, then at the wall of cameras broadcasting this live to the nation. He swallowed hard. "Sir, even if the theft charge is dropped, her visa is expired. We have to deport her." "Her visa is irrelevant," Taehyun said, stepping closer. He looked up at the bus window, locking eyes with Amara. "Because under Korean law, the spouse of a citizen is granted immediate residency status." "But you aren't married," the agent stammered. Taehyun reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He turned to the bus. "Amara, get off the bus." The guards inside, realizing the tide had turned, quickly unlocked Amara's handcuffs. She practically ran down the steps, stumbling onto the wet tarmac. The rain soaked her clothes instantly, but she didn't care. Taehyun dropped his cane. It clattered to the ground. He took 2 steps toward her on his own, ignoring the pain in his legs. He grabbed her face with both hands, looking at her like she was the only person on earth. "I told you," he whispered, his voice shaking with emotion. "I told you I wasn't letting you go." "You're crazy," Amara sobbed, gripping the lapels of his coat. "You created a media circus. You lied to the press." "I didn't lie," Taehyun said. He dropped to one knee. The crowd went silent. The only sound was the rain and the clicking of camera shutters. "Amara Okafor," Taehyun said, looking up at her. "You cleaned me when I was dirty. You fed me when I was weak. You were my voice when I was silent. You are the only reason I am standing here today." He opened the box. Inside sat a simple, elegant ring, not the stolen watch, but something far more permanent. "I don't want a nurse. I don't want a maid. I want a partner. Marry me. Stay. Let me spend the rest of my life trying to be half as good to you as you were to me." Amara looked at the ring, then at the man. She thought about the lonely nights in the penthouse. She thought about the courage he showed in the server room. She realized she didn't just care for him, she loved him. She had loved him before she even knew he could walk. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder for the world to hear. "Yes." Taehyun slid the ring onto her finger. He stood up, pulled her close, and kissed her. It was a kiss that tasted of rain and victory. The reporters cheered. The immigration agents awkwardly shuffled away. The bus drove off empty. 1 year later. The morning sun streamed into the penthouse, but it felt different now. The cold, gray atmosphere was gone. The windows were open, letting in the breeze. Vases of bright African violets lined the sills. Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror, adjusting her blazer. She looked different, confident. Her hair was styled in braids, and she wore a suit that screamed executive. "You're going to be late," a voice rumbled from the bed. Taehyun was lying there, watching her. He looked healthy. His legs were strong now, thanks to months of intense therapy and Amara's relentless coaching. "I'm not going to be late," Amara said, smiling at him through the mirror. "It's my bakery. I open it when I want." "The Soul and Spice Bakery," Taehyun teased, sitting up. "The only place in Gangnam where you can get proper jollof rice and French pastries." He walked over to her, no limp, just a confident stride. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Are you nervous about the board meeting today?" Amara asked, placing her hands over his. "No," Taehyun said. "The board loves me. Profits are up 200% since we purged the corruption." His face darkened slightly. Besides, Min-jae and Madame Choi sent another letter from prison today, asking for forgiveness. Did you read it? No. Taehyun kissed her neck. I burned it. I don't have time for the past. I'm too busy building our future. He turned her around. By the way, I have a meeting with the Nigerian ambassador at noon. He wants to discuss trade deals. I told him I'd only agree if he brings me some of that pepper soup your mother makes. Amara laughed, a sound that filled the massive room with joy. You're impossible. I'm happy, he corrected. He kissed her forehead. Go. Feed the city. I'll see you at home. Amara grabbed her bag and walked to the door. She paused, looking back at him. The man who had been a ghost was now the most alive thing in her world. And she, the invisible maid, was the queen of his empire. Taehyun, she called out. Yeah. Don't wait up, she winked. I might have a late delivery. I'll wait, he said, smiling the smile she fell in love with. I waited 2 years for you. I can wait a few hours. Amara walked out of the penthouse and into the elevator. As the doors closed, she touched the ring on her finger. She wasn't lucky. She was a survivor. And as the elevator descended, she knew that no matter how high she climbed, she would never forget the midnight she helped a broken king learn how to stand. The end. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next one.